And I found somebody who taught meditation, small group of us at his home. And after a couple of times, I remember going to Michael, the instructor, saying, it's really interesting. Every time I feel my mind is almost going to start to relax, I get this urge to sing. And he's like, well, sing. And I said, I started laughing. I said, I actually have people in my life that ask that I not do that.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I am Brenda Kilhofer, and I am your cheap mama, and I am so excited. I've been waiting for this interview for a while so that our schedules could get together. I am meeting today with Wendy Darling, and she has a manual that everyone needs to get their hands on, stat, called Create Your Miraculous Life. It's Never Too Late. And so I'm gonna turn it on over, let Wendy introduce herself. We've already had a ton of conversation before the show, and I know this is going to be a great show that provides a lot of mamas out there some incredible resources and solutions. So Wendy, take it away.
Okay, well, first of all, it's wonderful to be here with you today. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmother, so I have a little expertise in that realm. And as we were talking, a portion of my time has always been devoted to youth. However, that is not my quote profession. I started out as, I really started out as a sixth grade teacher for a year, got in trouble with my principal a lot. There's a whole story behind that, but we won't spend our time today. And ended up getting a couple of graduate degrees in counseling psychology, postgraduate work in management and organizational development. I was dean of students for a program called Semester at Sea. We had 700 plus college students living in combined quarters, living on a ship, sailing around the world. And I was 28, I was their mom, and my first gray hair popped out during that trip. It was both extraordinary and probably the most demanding experience of my career. And when
I can't even imagine being that young and having that many kids at sea.
Yeah,
incredible.
Well, we had a whole staff. It wasn't just me, but yes, it was quite an experience in so many ways. But Dean of Students was my long-term goal at that time. And training and development was in infancy. So I got involved in corporate training and development, consulting, and started my own business. I worked inside an organization for a few years, started my own business in 1981. And my lane has always been focused on executive and team development. And I was on contract with a Fortune 100 company, traveling all over the United States, doing some work for them. And this one lovely day in early January, now 30 years ago, I was really sick. I wasn't taking as good a care of myself as I should have been. I was very driven in my career. I was also married. I was a mom of a very young child. So I was in super mom mode. I just thought I was invincible. And I got a pretty strong lesson that was not the case. So I was at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport waiting for my flight to LA. I was sick as a dog, so I went outside to get some fresh air. Obviously, this is way before the restrictions we have today. And I passed out and I fell over a ledge and I fell about 25 feet. And I landed on my right leg. My leg was shattered. I had multiple surgeries. It took about 10-ish months and multiple surgeries before I knew if I would ever walk again, which I do. I also had some back fractures, and I was much later diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. It was also at this time, around week 4 of being in the hospital, that my former husband came, suitcases packed, saying he no longer wished to be married any longer. And even though I take full responsibility for my portion that contributed to the decision, we probably might agree that the timing was not exactly optimal, not that it ever is. And the real blow came when we went to court He happened to be an attorney, and he was awarded full custody of our son, who was only 4.5 at the time. And that's really when I broke into a million pieces. And this also just opened up a whole new way of looking at life and living, because my mom was the one that suggested, I was so traumatized from all of this, because prior to my accident, I was fearless. I mean, what 28-year-old in their right mind accepts a position as dean of student? You know, it was like, sure, I can do that. That's the way I was. And now suddenly I was questioning everything. And my mom suggested I might want to learn how to meditate. And at that time, quieting my mind was a complete oxymoron, but desperate times, right? And I found somebody, I was living in Dallas at the time, and I found somebody who taught meditation, small group of us at his home. And after a couple of times, I remember going to Michael, the instructor, saying, you know, it's really interesting. Every time I feel my mind is almost going to start to relax, I get this urge to sing. And he's like, well, sing. And I said, you know, I started laughing. I said, I actually have people in my life that ask that I not do that. And he looked at me and he said, just see what happens. So I went back to my little place in the house, got into that space, and I let what was kind of this melodic types of sound, singing, come out of me. And for the first time in a very long time, not only did my mind start to relax, but so did my body. And as I mentioned, I was living in Dallas, and what they say is true. Everything's a little bit bigger there. And I was literally in the closet with this. I would go to do my meditation and this sound stuff in my closet. But I was back now at the same house after one of our little gatherings, just a small group of us. And I'm walking down the hallway, and I'm walking by this person, and out of my mouth, I say, oh, you have a block around your heart. And I'm thinking, well, where did that come from? And what was really interesting and a gift to a certain extent was, okay, so now I'm further down the hallway, getting ready to go into a different room. This man's son was a teenager at the time. He was somewhere way back behind me. I hear him say to the same person, hey, you've got a block around your heart. And I'm thinking to myself, what is happening to me? Because prior to my accident, this was not my world. And what ended up happening, Brenda, was I began to open up to my healing gifts. I'm able to see energy. I'm able to see where things are locked up and blocked. There's a place in my system now. It's called the Miraculous Living Method. And I'm able, if you look at a human being as a very complex Rubik's Cube, our life experiences can create us to get out of alignment. And my process helps to put you back. So we do work with the emotional body, because a lot of times that is what's influencing choices and results in ways that maybe we don't want. There's also a brain training aspect, because there's obviously been a lot talking about research, all of that, with how the mind works. And so my process, literally, there's a training of the mind where either we're strengthening existing neural pathways to the results that you want to be experiencing, or we're creating new ones. And so that's part of the process as well. So I have been blessed now. I still do consulting work, but I have been blessed where I work with entrepreneurs to grow their business, earn more money. I work with singles to attract love. I work with couples to replenish their relationships. I have worked with children who either have learning disabilities or are challenged in some ways. And the results, I have to say, are phenomenal. I've worked with women who have been abused, and in an extremely short period of time, I'm talking hours, they are freed from that. So even though I was never this person prior to my accident, was it my brain injury? I don't know. Was it the fall? I'll never know. But it opened up a whole new world for me. And I help people today in a variety of ways to really get the results that they want.
Wow, so many directions that we could go with this. I mean, I just, wow. I mean, there's so many different, there's never a coincidence. There's always a reason. There's a reason that we're here together right now at this time and place in the universe with everything that's going on. And there were just so many, I know we talked earlier about all of your work with teens, and yet you're helping entrepreneurs today. You're helping the littlest ones, moms, everybody. I really, one of the things that intrigues me more than anything, I think, is the whole traumatic brain injury. For a couple reasons. I've recently had several falls off of a horse, which I was absolutely frustrated because I've been doing some coaching through some seminars with, and of course I have my own team to coach. I do public speaking. So I would get so frustrated over the fact that I couldn't recall things. It's like, I can picture everything. I can picture the person's name. I can picture everything that I'm, and I was somebody who always had that photographic memory. Like I could go to age itty bitty and remember things, and people like, how do you remember that? And question why others would say they had no recollection, because it was just so natural for me. And somebody recently gave me a different perspective because she had had a tumor. So it gave her the gift of intuition, where she had been that logical, photographic, knew everything before. And she had said, she felt like it forced her to be in her heart instead of in her head, and really be able to respond to the needs of others, because she no longer could rely on that cognitive piece of it.
Yep, that's true. And that's what in part happened. I've always been somewhat intuitive.
Yeah.
But with all the trauma and the brain injury, and that was not diagnosed right away.
Mm-hmm.
Remember my accident happened in 1990. Brain injuries were not at the top of the food chain at that point in time. Plus I had so much physical trauma, just wasn't thought about. And actually, especially since you are a speaker, I leverage it, because even though it doesn't happen often, it has happened where I will be speaking somewhere and I kind of blip out for a second and I have no idea what I was talking about. So obviously I share this story rather often, and I tell my audience, so this is what you need to be listening very carefully, because I may have to look at you and you have to tell me what I was talking about. And I usually get right a little.
I love that. Yeah.
And it's happened. It has happened where so the part that I also love is feeling comfortable sharing my humanness. And I think that that's what's really important in our world today. I am not good at pretending. Maybe I was before, I don't know. But things shifted, priorities shifted for me. I had to learn how to be a different person. We're dealing with so much with our pandemic. When I had my accident, I just shared, everything that was familiar was erased from my life. I mean, I had whiteboard. There was no hooks to hang any part of my identity. I had to learn how to become a different mom. Suddenly having my child taken from me. I mean, how crazy is that? This child that I grew in my own body, and somebody I'd never met before, called a judge, decided, well, I don't know, maybe we're going to change the rules here and change things up, which they did. And by the way, it's all worked out pretty well. But it forced me to be a different kind of mom, because we went from one home to two homes to 2 cities to ultimately 2 states.
Wow.
And each time I had to go within, and I talked with my closest of friends, because especially when my former husband came and said, I'm being transferred with my job, and really he had already worked it. So yeah, I did not intuitively get a green light to also move.
Yeah.
And it was heart-wrenching.
Mhm.
That what I learned about unconditional love and the bond between myself and my son was phenomenal. And I'm going to guess that in your community, you have parents who are single parents, worried, how is this going to work? I don't want my child to be messed up. And I am here to say we had other challenges, but my relationship with my son has remained strong and solid through all of this. And I got to be honest, I didn't believe that our divorce was going to screw him up for life. I just was not willing to lean into that. And his father and his now new wife would not allow me to even be in their home. And I can't tell you how happy I was when the day came that my son had a computer camera, and I was just able to see him, and he was able to show me what his room looked like. And, we just had to learn to do things different. So I really want to impress on whether you're in a traditional family or not, whatever design your family is, you get to be an advocate for those kids. My son and I only had two big issues. One was when he would come, he would just bring this tiny little suitcase, right? My son had a gift of taking that tiny little suitcase of stuff and making it go. He had gifts, and he did end up moving with me his senior year in high school. And ever since, we have been in relatively close physical proximity to each other, which I'm forever grateful for. Even though I'm in Southern California, he's in San Francisco. That's one quick plane ride in my world. I'm good with that, and at least for now. And so we just really, see, I'm having one of those moments. It's like, where was I with this? See, it happens.
Yeah.
And so, we just really found our way. And, I know what I was talking about. So, okay, so making a mess was one of his things. And I even bought him this big piece of furniture that you can just slide and shove stuff in. Yeah, that didn't work so well. But the other was video games. His father had bought him a video game. And, I'm a product of the 60s, right? I'm very anti-violence, war, all of that. Let's talk things out kind of. And so he had this video game that he was so addicted to. And he would sometimes wait until I was asleep, and he'd get back on, and he'd play at the night, and then he doesn't want to go to school the next day. So that was really what, I was cursing his father for even giving him that. And what I want to share, though, is there was the day he said, "Hey, Mom, come here. Look at what I just did." So my son was very involved in music. He had been in band and orchestra. He was also an athlete, but he took this game, made a video recording of it, put it to music, and I'm watching it. Because of the music he chose, it changed my whole experience of what I was looking at. And I went, oh my gosh, this is one of his gifts. He is able to shift feelings. That's what they do in film with cinematography, with music. All of that is they're trying to mess with our feelings, to engage us in some way. And so here was the one thing that just drove me nuts about him and concerned me as well, to discovering what his gifts are. And I think that's one of our jobs as parents, is really to pay attention to what your child does well, what comes easy to them, what their interests are. It's also equally as important to look at where they're struggling, because a lot of times we find our way, sometimes through our passions, our interests, but also more times than not in my world, it comes out of challenge. I've been part of a community called K's Community Alliance with Youth Success. And we empowered students, high school students, to find their place, their purpose in life. And there's a whole curriculum now that's been developed over the years. It's just phenomenal. And maybe now 3, possibly 4 years ago, I've lost track of time.
Mhm.
I found myself in a position that I was to put on this event. And I won't tell you all the crazy details, but what turned out to be was, first of all, I went around to schools and we did video asking kids of all ages, what does success mean to you?
Mhm.
What do you think, you want to do with your life? What challenge have you maybe had that's changing how you look at what you may do? And then we had kids do talks, kind of like TED Talks.
Right.
And I wouldn't tell anybody what these talks were about. But I remember telling a couple of the board members, I said, I dare you to get through this without losing it. I mean, these stories of what these kids had endured and became stronger, and what they now want to do with their life because of it. And I really think if we give kids that kind of opportunity, I think it's very helpful.
I agree. Absolutely. There were a couple different things that you touched on that I definitely want to touch on when we get back. I mean, one, we're going to take a quick break here in a second, but one, I'm really curious, if you want to think about it on the break, what your process was for overcoming, really everything, your way of thinking. And I imagine, like, I know today it's more commonplace for a dad, for a judge to say, yes, the father gets custody versus the mother. But let's face it, in the 80s, that was not necessarily the case. So I can imagine there was a lot that you got to go through and unpack and uncover and deal with in that journey to get to a place that you could co-parent in a way that clearly has, made your son and had a great relationship. The other thing, I want to dive into the video games and what you talked about around feelings and movies and all of the different things. Like you said, they're there manipulating our feelings. That is one of my passions, to help people understand how that's occurring, how to protect our kids and direct our kids so that, no, they don't miss out on the whole world. Because sometimes I feel like the helicopter mom, making them miss out on things that other kids don't necessarily get to miss out on. And yet, it's very much for that reason of that manipulation of thoughts and feelings and things that go on. So we're going to jump off, take a quick break, and come right back and dive into those two topics if you're good with that. Great.
Let's take a short second real quickly to acknowledge our sponsor. I want to tell you about a podcast, Radicalize. If you are sick and tired, and maybe you just too in awe of, like, what can we do about these political extremists, these conspiracies, this disinformation that's headed all across the media, and we don't know how to control it or get a handle of it. Well, Liz is on the job. Liz Wall, she traces the roots and rise of America's modern political extremist, conspiracy, and disinformation movements. This podcast will get you right up to date and get you what you need so you will never be in the dark. Check it out on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Check it out right now. Leave a review, and when you binge all of the previous episodes, make sure in the review you let them know that the Transform Your Media Network sent you right over, Marcus Art that is, sent you right over to check it out. Leave a 5-star because, man, I listened to some of the episodes and I'm blown away. I can't get enough. Let's do it.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Brenda Kilhofer. I'm your cheap mama, and I'm here with Wendy Darling. And, she opened up all kinds of topics of conversation. Wendy, it was 1980-ish, in the early 80s, when a judge said, nope, you don't get custody. And for our listeners, many of them may not be able to relate to that being such a big deal, but I mean, in the 80s, let's face it, that was kind of unheard of. So
Yeah.
what was that like for you, and what did you do to overcome yourself, any negative feelings you had about it?
Well, first of all, it was a tremendous blow. I didn't handle it. Something literally snapped inside of me. That first night, I couldn't fall asleep. I could literally feel my brain trying to find a folder where to put this information, and there was none. And so I got concerned. I reached out for help. I said, I'm not okay. I cried a lot. I reached out to friends. I mean, one of my closest friends at that time said, you are the best crier. And I went, oh my God, I never thought that would be my claim to fame. But I knew there was something inside of me that just knew, first of all, that I would find my way out of this. I didn't know how. I didn't know how long it would take. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I felt very violated. Here I was, a regular upstanding citizen of the United States, and suddenly, as I said, somebody said, sorry, we're going to change the game. So I wasn't okay for a very long time. One of my best friends even said, when Adam, my son, decided to come to live with me his senior year in high school, I mean, we saw each other through that period of time. It was just, I missed out on a lot, especially when they moved away. And even when my former husband accepted a business transfer, and I'm feeling like I'm being guided, don't move. There was a part of me, based on some of the things I was becoming aware of and learning and growing in myself, that my son, that was going to be his experience. Because, by the way, we were not co-parenting. There was barely communication between us, only critical kinds of basic stuff. And I had to accept that also. I think that I reached a point realizing, okay, technically my son is safe. My degree of measurement was baseline. And I said, I don't have anything to say or do or control over what happens over here, but I do when he's with me. And so I just tried my best to do what we did, when we were together. And I checked in with him and I was watching him closely. And what was really unfortunate, I even said to Adam at some point, maybe this happened to me because God knew I had this huge heart and I really wanted to support other kids. And he knew that we were going to be okay no matter what. And he wanted to make sure that I didn't use all of this up because there were so many other people and children I was going to support in my lifetime, which has been true. I wish we would have done it differently. But because of how I became aware, and you even said there are no real coincidences in life, and there really is a very beautiful, miracles. of life, you know, like my book, Create Your Miraculous Life, It's Never Too Late. It really is up to us to tap into that. You know, as I mentioned, I was not that person before, but I am today. I know what is possible. I know when we can open up our intuitive guidance system, this place within us, you can call it whatever you want. I happen to use the word God. I sometimes use angels or guides, the universe. You can call it Sam from what all I care, but it's that part that we are blessed with that always has our back. And one of the things that I do is I open people up to be able to dial that up and receive, to be able to receive guidance in your own unique way. Not everybody hears guidance. I feel it, I know it. Somebody just recently told me, oh no, you're auditory. And I'm like, if I'm auditory, I ain't hearing nothing. And so it's only very rare. So now I'm working on trying to open that up more. So it's again, it was a journey, it was a process. But if anybody in your listening audience is going through this period of time, first of all, there are people like me that can help you find your way, get your footing, find how you're going to deal with this. You know, my mom gave me very good advice that horrific day in Texas when that judge awarded full custody to my former husband. I was beyond devastated. I did not expect that even a little bit. She said, the better you are, the better Adam's going to be. The more accepting you are, the more accepting Adam's going to be. And I will be honest, there came a point in time, we were living in a very small town in East Texas. My former husband at that time was the attorney working for the big company. And I barely could get work.
Right.
Once I was able to start working, I mean, I was making something like $1,200 a month when I was used to earning $5,000 a day. Mm-hmm. And I finally got a job that wasn't really working out. And eventually I made the decision, as difficult as it was, to move from this little town to Dallas. Now I was about an hour-ish away from sun, but still it was going to be a change. And my first few weeks, I'm crying a lot. I'm feeling like a horrible human being, but we made it work. And the final part of that decision was, what do I want to be teaching my son? Yeah. Do I want to teach them that as a parent, you sacrifice everything, including your means of being able to support yourself and your child? Or do you want to teach your child that sometimes really difficult decisions have to be made for the better of your family, even though maybe on the surface, right then and there, it doesn't make sense? Right. And I wanted it to be that.
Well, certainly your mom is a very wise woman. I think all too often, and I see the trend, especially today, where moms and dads are living vicariously through their children's successes versus being the example in it. And that's what I got from what your mom said. Hey, you get to show him the way by being the example of what it is, how you would want him to proceed in any circumstance. And I think that's so, so cool. So I want to dive into what it is you do, because all of this is all a part of it. And I love that you shared. And I want to spend a few minutes on that, because I have obviously tons of different people from all different walks of life on the show, really kind of talking about the same thing and coming from different spaces. Most of the folks that I've had on are not necessarily calling it God as you do. or there is an association, but there's not, there's more of there's more of a spiritual nature. Help me understand, help me bring it together for, a lot of my listeners out there are Christians. They look at a lot of the types of things that you're talking about. And I do, I mean, I believe the Bible talks about healing. I believe Christ gave us an example of all of these things, and we're asked to be like Christ in Scripture. And so I see the correlation in all of these new age things that people say we shouldn't play with to Scripture. And so many would probably say, well, hey, if you're trying to teach people to open up and listen to a voice and things like that, that maybe that's not right. Help me rectify that for our listeners first off, because I think that's part of where we are today.
So first of all, I'm very non-denominational.
Mm-hmm.
I do not bring religion into my body of work. I respect and have worked with people with all different types of backgrounds. And I do not tap into. I support and accept and respect wherever somebody's coming from. So that's not where I am coming from.
Perfect.
Secondly, I may not be for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
My gift is basically, I said how I might speak it, but it's more the gift of recognizing, and thank goodness more people are appreciating and able to accept it today, that there is, in fact, some sort of infinite wisdom that exists. I am not a brain scientist. I'm not a medical doctor. I was just your regular, well, not maybe regular, but I was a corporate consultant. Mm-hmm. And it's because of what happened to me, I got to begin to experience life differently. And so I believe I have been given the privilege and the honor of taking what was given to me to give to others so that you can be living the life that you were designed to live, that you are cultivating your gifts and talents in a way that you're living a more richer, fulfilling life. But I got to be honest, I want you to be doing that in a way that you're making your special mark and contribution in life. Our world is very volatile right now. And it was maybe a few years ago that kind of this guidance I felt and heard, the essence of it was, I need my soldiers all up and running. No more time to contemplate your navels. You need to be out there. You need to be supporting people. It's part of what motivated me and drew me to write my last book. That we all need to be stepping up and stepping out a little bit more. And with your community as parents, we are more than aware that it's not just about me, the adult. You're concerned about your children and your children's future. And even how can you best support yourself and your children during these times of change right now? Because we don't know yet what our new normal is going to be. We don't know yet how this is all going to play out. But, so I'm kind of trying to do my part. That's why you and I are together today.
And you made a comment about your son, that you knew he was safe.
Yeah.
You knew that he was safe. And I think that that's key for all of us, right? Is to accept and know that wherever we are, whatever's going on for us right now, we're safe.
Yeah.
And the fear and the worry and the to the point of the media and all of those things that are bringing in and casting that doubt, if we allow that piece in.
Yeah, I'm not saying to take your antenna down, because
right.
There are things we need to be concerned about
mm-hmm.
and aware of and conscious of. But, people like Ellen DeGeneres and a whole lot of us, want to see more kindness in the world.
Mhm.
We don't have to agree about anything, but we can respect that we're human beings. We're all in this together. And so we have to find, if it's just, one little pod that starts working on getting along better, and then maybe it can grow a little bit more. So there are a lot of issues. We just started watching on Netflix a series called All American,
Uh-huh.
and it's about a high school student living in a very poor community, and he's being taken out of that poor community in LA and given a chance to play football in Beverly Hills. But there are a whole lot of dynamics, and we're only in a few segments of this. But I've heard from others that it's a very well done show, but it's going to probably push people's buttons and show where you might have judgment, where you might even be biased, you might feel tremendous compassion. It's going to evoke your value system of where you are. And because we're looking at a Black family, we're looking at a mixed family, and we're looking at teenagers and issues that they're being in the underprivileged community versus the uber wealthy. And there's just a lot of moving parts in it. And I think we come back to, what can you do in your way, in your part of the world?
And I think sometimes it just boils down to finding common ground. We don't always agree on everything. And at the end of the day, to your point, we don't have to fight about everything. I remember, I think I shared with you before we got started earlier today, that my children had a lockdown at school. And this one was very different than any one that I had ever experienced. One, I found out about it from the kids first, which meant that they were afraid. Usually it's the other way around. I get a letter, hey, do you have a lockdown at school? Oh yeah, it was nothing. This time there were kids locked in closets. They ended up evacuating the school after the lockdown. There were kids that didn't make it into the lockdown and were running down the street, knocking on doors in the neighborhood. And, and parents were trying to grasp information on different social media groups that were local groups and things like that. And it was interesting as we were all sharing different perspectives, how many were there to condemn, like, these happen, condemning all of the parents. And that was exactly my question. Finally, in the end, I said, those of you that didn't have students here, you can't imagine what that time was like. And there go my doggies. My husband tried to come in through the back door so as not to disturb us, and they went crazy anyway. But I said, can't we just be human? Can't you accept that your experience a year ago, 10 years ago, wasn't the experience of the parents today? Just because your child was in it and somebody else's child was in it, the parent of a child that was in a closet is very different from the parent of a child that was in a classroom.
Right.
We all have different experiences, and we're all going to have a different perspective and a different thought around those experiences. And where can we find the common ground? At the end of the day, every one of those parents love their kids, and all they wanted was safety for the kids.
But I think we have to go deeper, meaning what's going on that so many people are so angry and so frustrated, and they're taking it out in a variety of ways. What's happened that it's become acceptable? I don't know if that's the right word, that I can just spew anything at all. And that's what concerns me. Why are people so darn unhappy? What has happened that they feel they've missed out on something? or they're being wronged about something, I think it's a deeper issue. And so and I'm not saying I have an answer, but I think the more any individual, any one of us can be a voice of reason, can begin to set more of an example. Remember, I work with energy now as part of what I do. I know, and if any of you are curious about this, look up David Hawkins. He's a doctor. He did a 30-year study. He came up with a scale showing emotion.
Yeah.
And what I loved about his body of work, first of all, it gave me more language to explain in part what I do. But I share this with my clients in my talks, in my workshops. If you come from a place of love, we'll just use that as an example. He has proven that you can positively influence people that are angry or sad or frustrated. So for example, when I go to schools and I talk to kids about this thing called bullying, I let them know these are the kids whose hearts have just been stomped on in some way. And this is this is their survival mechanism. There's a lot of people living in survival mechanism right now. But what I teach kids, and I'm going to teach you all right now, you can literally sit in your home, have the intention, and imagine. I do this all the time, right from my office in San Diego. I fill myself up with love. I send it out to my little cul-de-sac. I send it out to my neighborhood, to San Diego, to California, to the United States and the globe. Because I know that we can start filling up other people's love wells. I teach this to kids. I said, nobody has to even know you're doing it. You can be at school and you see somebody that's struggling. You just send them silently love and fill them up. I have seen changes take place just with doing that.
I absolutely believe that. I love that. I love the frequency chart with David Hawk. In fact, I'm writing a fictional book, and to teach that, and I actually use the chart in it. I have like this little bracelet that's a meter of all of those for the characters in it as they're learning about. But it's so true. Now back to, because we didn't touch on it, the video games and the feelings in the cinema, because I kind of feel like that's a perfect segue. Do you feel, or what's your opinion around our television programming, our music, our entertainment, and the frequency that it is putting out there into the world? And is that part of that deeper, and that, like you said, it goes so much deeper than where we are at? Do you think there's some group, not everybody, because there's also a huge group of people like yourself that are teaching teaching around that and making people aware, but do you think that there are people weaponizing those frequencies against the world in mass?
Yes. And some of it's not intentional. I'm not saying that they're out to screw people up. There probably are. It's just like the food industry. They mess with food so that you become addicted to it. Right. And that's why, that's one of my biases, and something I think is really important, why it's so important to be very careful what we put in our bodies and our children's bodies. And as far as video games, they are designed to create addiction. They want you to be on there. They want you to be using it. And what I also have learned as a person who has recovered pretty well from a brain injury is you have to be very careful what you allow in, because the brain works 24/7, putting that information in all different places. And most of the places that they're put are what I refer to as under the radar. It's your subconscious programming.
Yeah.
And so you don't even know that you're being messed with. You know, it's a lot easier to explain. It's kind of like why somebody wants to go on a diet. They get all organized. They're into day 1, maybe day 2, maybe even day 14, and suddenly something happens and gets completely derailed. It's because of the deeper stuff. It's estimated that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. The majority of those thoughts are in the subconscious mind, meaning you've got all this going on. You have this conversation and commands and thoughts and statements and beliefs operating all the time. You don't even know they're going on. And what's even worse is this majority of those thoughts today are the same ones you had yesterday. And so we have to be very conscientious of how we navigate that with our children. You know, I told you, even way back then, with my son in the 90s, I think it was in the 90s,
Right.
you know, that was our real place of disagreement, shall we say. And it's a fine line. I personally, back then, didn't let my son have a cell phone until graduation day. And he was like, I'm the only person who doesn't have a cell phone. I'm like, oh, well. Now, today, it's a little different because it does let us be in closer communication. Again, this is already many years ago. So I think it's, again, really important. We rely too much today on outside stimulus. You know, this right here, my cell phone, it's like an appendage to me. I do my best to get away from it. There's a little word game that I play that just sucks me right in on the weekend. And so, I mean, I'm not saying I've got this all figured out,
Right.
and nor am I immune, but I do know that my sweetheart likes to watch very different shows than me. I won't watch them. I will not be in that environment. I will not do that. Now, also, I am super sensitive, but I don't need that in my life. I personally stay informed, but I don't live in news.
Right.
I like to stay informed, but again, because so much of it is negative, and I have to manage this so that I'm in good shape so I can contribute to those who I serve. And I think our children, especially, their minds are still formulating. I mean, the majority of the belief systems, it's believed, is formed by the ages, yeah, I've heard 7.
Yeah, I think I think it's something like 60% by 4, 80 by something like 7, or maybe it's 50,
Yeah.
60, and 80, but most of it by the time they're 18.
But the good news about people like me is I can help shift that so that you're not limited any longer. And by the way, you don't have to know what happened. You don't have to know what wrong or off or whatever. You don't have to relive things. The process itself takes care of it. And I am forever grateful for that because I had a very challenging childhood. My mother was highly critical, abusive. I had a lot to overcome, and I did. And I love that I can help people get what they need easily and quickly. In fact, in my book, or if you reach out to me directly, I even have a jumpstart offer that I created this year because of COVID. You know, a lot of people don't have the means that they might have to pay me for my full body of work, because the majority of people will work for me for like 3 months, sometimes less, but then they don't need me at all. But I put together a package that teaches people the process, that allows me to really find what needs to shift. We take care of that. And then you have it to work with. You've already learned what you can do on your own. So that jump starts it. And if anybody's interested in that, they just can reach out to me at wendydarling.com, and we can set something up.
That's awesome, because that was my next question. How do people reach out to you? And, you know, when will you come back? I feel like we just barely scratched the surface on what families and people and human beings really need to know right now, because I know for myself, I've been kind of on that, that path. And for you, it was a process. It took years, and now you have the answer, and you can walk somebody through and lockstep them through in such a way that it doesn't have to take years and years and years, to your point. I know I've always been intuitive, right? And now I'm like, okay, so, how do I discern whether this is my intuition or whether, and how, and, always being open and not, sometimes it's as somebody begins to start to stretch themselves. I know for me, and I can only speak for me, sometimes there's a little bit of fear, and then of course there's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of like, okay, I've got all these pieces to the puzzle, and what's the answer? Like, what are you trying to tell me? Because I know, like, and I very recently had that. I mean, I woke up with, having dreamt of a certain group of people from way in the past. And I'm like, man, there's something there. And then the next day on social media, all of a sudden, all of those people and I'm like, what is it that I'm supposed to understand? So it sounds like that those are the types of things you can kind of help somebody shortcut that process versus trying to figure out for themselves how.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important thing is, we are not meant to try to figure everything out on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And blessed. This is my 40th year since I started my business. I turned 70 this year. And, it's,
You
it's
do
true.
not. Oh my goodness. You don't look a day over 50.
Well, I can show you my driver's license. I tell you the truth. And I think and so I've worked a lot of years with a lot of different kind of people. And that's what also I pride in, whether it's a corporate position, consulting opportunity, or an individual or a group. I come into your world. I'm not asking you to live life by my terms.
Mm-hmm.
I look to see, and I'm listening for, and I have a very unique listening for what's your truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to help you fine tune things, because like I said, I just want you to be living the life you want to be living, and to try to get you there easier and hopefully faster as well.
Incredible. Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. I
Of
feel like the
course.
time just went by too fast. I'm sure the audience would love to have you back again. So you are
Of
welcome
course.
anytime. Would enjoy having you.
And if I could just say, have people that might be curious go to my website. It's wendydarling.com. There's an audio there that you can listen to. There's an RQ assessment that talks about your relationship quotient, how you interface with other people. It'll also take you, then put you on my email list. And right now I'm interviewing people that are sharing miraculous moments. That's something I started, maybe about 6 weeks ago. And you'll also get information when things are coming up about workshops. And as I did mention, if you want, there's also a place to schedule some time with me and have a heart-to-heart. And my book, both of my books, but my latest book, Create Your Miraculous Life, It's Never Too Late, is available on Amazon. And there's a link in there for the Jumpstart offer, or, just reach out to me personally. And there's a really cool exercise in the book called Your Results Accelerator. So if you've got a goal that you're shooting for, find that exercise and do it, because it's going to show you where you need to also focus on to get your faster results.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, audience. I hope you will take Wendy up on all of that information. Get out there, get the book. I know I will be grabbing her book for sure. And anything, I'm all about achieving my goals. And again, thank you so much for being with us. Remember, we're on the Transform You Network. Make sure you like and follow the cheapmamalife at cheapmamalife.com.